Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Hat Top Gaming here, and today's very special episode is on my first impressions after a month of owning the Xbox Rogue Ally X. We'll be going over the general first impressions, performance-wise, ergonomic feel, the good and the bad that comes with owning this. So alongside that, we'll be also going over some just general comparisons to my 512 LCD gigabyte model of the Steam Deck as well. So before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Also, if I sound a little funky compared to my usual videos, I'm trying out a new microphone, so please bear with it. So going off with the first thing, I think the easiest thing, of course, is going to be ergonomic feel of it. So biggest thing with the Steam Deck, right, compared to the Xbox Rogue Ally X is, of course, going to be just the fact that it's literally just built more like an Xbox controller. I've been playing Xbox since the 360. I had an Xbox One Series X and the Xbox One S at one point, and personally, I don't really see much of a difference. I've always enjoyed the bulb shape that the back had for the handles. I always thought that worked well for the Steam Deck, and I never had any issue with it. It kind of reminds me a bit of the Nintendo Switch, of course, but of course the Nintendo Switch was just more of a flat, straight, narrow build with the Joy Cons. And then going over to the Xbox One Ally X, yes, it's definitely a different feel. And when I first had it, like that first week or two, I definitely felt a more noticeable approach to it. Switching between the two systems as I've been doing for the past month, I've gotten more used to it. Like odd feeling to go from no handles to basically an Xbox handle, and then here I have a Xbox Series X controller just by comparison. Of course, this thing, the triggers and all that, of course, comparatively to anything else, is just super different. And of course, playing on the Steam Deck and solely on the Steam Deck, really, for the past 3 years, and on the occasional using an Xbox Series controller for Bluetooth gaming, if I had the Steam Deck docked or something like that. Like it always just feels weird switching between these three. I on occasion I still do in fact hook my Steam Deck or my Xbox Rogue Ally X now to the TV to do some dock play. Now, when it comes to the button layout, I've always been a fan of how the Steam Deck did it, but it comes with one very big caveat. I never liked the bumpers. I always felt like they were overly sticky. When I'm trying to use both at the same time, like in a game, for example, I always felt like they were not the most responsive. I thought the X, Y, A, B buttons were cool. I personally prefer the just plus D-pad on the Steam Deck in comparison to the Xbox Rogue Ally X. I like this is like fine. Like there's no problem with this. But sometimes I feel like because it has eight, I guess, different directions it can go in instead of the four, it can sometimes feel like my finger might slip or I might push down in a different direction. So it may not always be as responsive, but I understand why, some people may be more of a fan of this. The other notable change, of course, is the thumbstick position. So one is out on the outer left, one's on the inner right, comparative to the Steam Deck, which they're both on the inside and they're both at the same level. The Xbox Rogue Ally X has it just slightly changed, not really noticeable personally, but it is, of course, a little off. And while I have them both here, the Xbox Rogue Ally X is, I'm going to say, about a quarter inch thicker, maybe not even that. Though I will definitely say weight wise, there's not much of a difference. Yeah, as you may expect, the Xbox Rogue Ally X is in fact heavier, but it's not noticeable. Like it will never make you, like, oh man, my arms are getting tired, my hands are gonna cramp more, blah 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 blah. Speaking of which, they have the four back buttons on the Steam Deck. I never personally used them. I have some friends that have used them on occasion, right? I never felt the need to. On the Xbox Rogue Ally X, you have just two of them instead. Again, I never felt the need for them. I will say that I feel like they're better placed where my middle fingers are just on them outright, so I can better get to them if I, ever so choose to do that. Compared to the Steam Deck, because it's on the four and the way that the bumpers and triggers are placed, I have like my middle finger, my ring fingers on them instead. I feel like it might be harder, or like I might have to be more intentful with my presses, so to speak. Whereas with the Xbox Rogue Ally X, it's just right there. I don't need to think about it. But speaking of the bumpers, again, I wasn't really a fan of the Steam Decks, but I did much prefer them on the Xbox Rogue Ally X. I felt they were a lot clickier, a lot more responsive to what I was doing. That being said, I preferred the matted approach that the Steam Deck has, where it's just, smooth, there's no texture or anything like that. On the Xbox Rogue Ally X, well, there is texture all over the back of the handle here, and there is alongside well with the bumpers here, but this side here, where my finger is not blocking, that is not texture. That is just sleekness right there, I guess you could call it. More like that glossiness. I don't know. I don't really like that. I feel like if I'm in a high stressful game or something like that, or blah blah blah, if I place my finger placement too well, I feel like it just slides off. The textured part, yeah, like it's like cool, but I don't really like that on the fingers. And again, if I feel like my fingers are sliding off of the triggers at times, so I had to like readjust my hand every now and then. So I'm not a fan of that. The last little thing when it comes to feel, though, I definitely would say is having to get used to all the buttons that they have. So there's a dedicated library button. We'll turn the Xbox Rog Ally X on now. So it opens just like as if it were a Windows PC. Put in your little passcode. If I'm on any app of any kind, it doesn't matter where. If I push this library button, it will automatically throw me back into the library. Now, personally, I think that was a really bad choice to put it right above what would be the equivalent of the start button, because every now and then I will just accidentally press it, so that's kind of annoying. But anyways, that's like that's its only use. It's a dedicated library button. I don't know why they felt the need to do that. I don't really see the need to. I think this is more annoying than anything else, because I rarely ever find myself pressing that after a month of use. The second thing, of course, is going to be command center button. So essentially what this is that it allows you to change between the performance modes and any like smaller little widgets that you put for here that you can just automatically get to. Biggest thing, of course, with it as well, which we'll get to later, is just going to be this essentially allows you to update the performance along with just smaller things that you may add, like increasing the frame rate, changing the resolution, recording your screen, color palette, etc., etc. The other button as well, which they kind of work in tandem, is the Xbox button. So if we lightly press it here, we can get the home system. So that way it shows our other installers here, the last 3 games that we played, a home, a library, settings, Xbox Social, Gaming Copilot. We can alternate the sound levels on different individual tasks that are running. Game recording capture, performance things, captures I personally have, the widget store, Xbox achievements, Xbox chat, and then just another ability to add widgets and change other little things. And of course, if we just go left instead, there is the command center as well. Now, of course, comparing that over to the Steam Deck here, we have just the 3 dot symbol here. So it obviously it'll open up this little window. It'll usually open up the settings, just smaller things like the Wi-Fi, airplane mode, Bluetooth, brightness, etc. And then, of course, the equivalent of the command center would be the performance adapter, which you can just, just disable frame limit, increase or limit how much you want it to, manual GPU, yada, yada, yada. If you have a Steam Deck, you probably have messed around with some of this, or even just to do like game profile stuff. Though even on like my personal level, I've never really used it, and I don't really feel the need to use it that often outside of just manually GPUing something, limiting the frame rate on a game that doesn't really need it like that, or smaller things like that. Maybe the scaling mode or the filter, etc. But again, I'm hardly ever using that, right? Going back to the Xbox Rog Ally X, though, of course, we're going to go over the one thing that I know most people are probably heard about, which is going to be the performance mode. So the way this thing works, right, is that you have 3 performance modes. You can alter it more by limiting cores and processors and whatnot. You don't need to touch any of that stuff. So when it comes to this, silent mode at 13 watts essentially equates to Steam Deck power. And when I say Steam Deck power, it is like literally just on par with it, maybe slightly better. Playing like your indie games, your AAA games that are, a few years old at this point, yada, 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 you're going to be playing on silent mode. So silent mode is exactly what it sounds like. You just don't hear the fans, you don't hear the processor going off, you don't hear anything, right? The only thing you hear is the game sounds. Now, performance mode, which I do use on occasion, essentially equates to about 25% boost in power comparative to the Steam Deck. Turbo is 35% boost. So really, realistically speaking, the only time you're going to be using these things is when you're playing multiplayer games, so you need that extra frame rate. You want to play at higher settings for certain games, or on the other end, if you're going to be playing something more intense, like I know Battlefield 6 was like a very big one that was talked about when this came out, you're going to probably go into turbo mode. Of course, the higher the performance mode that you're setting, the more battery you will drain. Personally, if you ask me, this thing charges like in an hour with the 65-watt charger you get. And when it comes to playing games, I never really feel like I'm on a timeline. Like, yes, of course, the battery will drain in its own natural time. I have yet to use turbo mode. I have not encountered a situation where I've needed to. The only game I think that I would actually argue would benefit from it is maybe Marvel Rivals, and that's just because of that game, both due to its graphical style, and then of course with all the powers and whatnot that are happening, and of course it being a multiplayer game, it might need that extra boost. But I only ever played on performance mode. Alongside the fact I'm a very big Chivalry 2 fan, and it makes a huge difference. I would definitely say, just in games in general, whether I'm playing in silent mode or I'm playing in performance mode, the frame rate is significantly different. I'll give you a small example. When I'm playing Ballillionaire, I was getting 60 frames on the Steam Deck. When I played it in silent mode on the Xbox Rog Ally X, I was getting 120 frames, if not higher. And on the other end, I've also tested out other games where I play in silent mode and I have the exact same settings on which I have played them on Steam Deck, and again, the frame rate is higher. So, for example, if a game is running at 40 frames per second, it'll run at 60, if not higher, on silent mode, just plain as day on the exact same settings. And of course, I put in performance mode. I can either get the graphics to get even better and sharper, or I can get even higher frame rate depending on what game I'm playing. A small example here I want to show you guys when it comes to color palette is here. This is NBA 2K14 running on the Xbox Ally X. I think it looks really sleek, and a part of that has to do with the fact that you can change game visual colors. So of course there's the default setting. You can change it to racing, scenery, RTS/RPG, FPS, cinema, eye care, and vivid. I always play in vivid as I feel like it enriches the colors a lot here. So this is this is running at 60 frames per second on the Xbox Royale X. Now we'll compare it to the Steam Deck, doing 60 frames there. And if you ask me, it's a noticeable difference when it comes to the color palette and also just I think the general feel and look of it personally. But this is just a small example, right? Some of you guys may look at this type of stuff and be like, oh, I don't see any visual difference, yada, yada, yada. So I'll show you another example as well. So here I have Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes running on the Steam Deck at about 40 frames per second. I have everything running on very high or ultra, whatever the setting was called, I forget. But we're going to average about 40 frames per second here. But this is essentially what I was running on when I was playing my original playthrough. So I'll let you guys take a second here to see what it looks like just as I'm running around doing a whole lot of nonsense here. Just so you guys get a better idea as to how it looks like on the Steam Deck, running the highest frames that I can. And again, I'm averaging 40 frames per second. So now we're going to show you the Xbox Rogue Ally X video. And now here we have the Xbox Rogue Ally X running the exact same settings, but here we have a 60 frames per second. You can see in the top left corner, for whatever reason on the Steam Deck, I can't get the ticker to record there. So, but here, it's going to be up to you guys to see if you see a noticeable difference. Again, I am playing on silent mode, so I'm playing on the equivalent of Steam Deck power, but of course, the Xbox Rogue Ally X has just better processing ability, so it's able to do more. Now, if you ask me, it's a little less pixelated. The frame difference is noticeable when you're playing it as it moves a lot on the Steam Deck, but really, I'm going to leave this up to you guys as to whether or not you guys see a noticeable difference. So final example here we're going to do is Elden Ring, of course. So this is running on the Steam Deck. This is hitting about high 30s to mid 40s frames per second here. As you get, I'm running on medium settings, basically the optimized ones for the Steam Deck already. And just doing some quick footage for you guys to see here and see what you guys think of this before I go over to the Xbox Rogue Ally X. So now here we're running on the Xbox Rogue Ally X. I'm playing on silent mode here, and again, this is the exact same settings that I'm playing it on the Steam Deck. Here you can see where I'm heading on my frame rates. Again, basically the same frame rate, though it's a bit more stable. Though in this case, we're on the mid to low 40s here consistently. So I'm going to fight these enemies real quick, kill them, blah, blah, blah. Then I'm going to run back up to the top. And now we switched over to performance mode, which is 17 watts compared to 13. Again, about 25% boost compared to the Steam Deck power. And as you can see, we're running a consistent 60 frames per second here. Again, this is just small testing for you guys to see visually how the game looks differently from a color palette wise compared to the Steam Deck. And of course, just from a performance mode. If you guys know any differences, it's really going to be up to you. I personally do. There are definitely parts of Elden Ring on the Steam Deck that don't look great, especially in the more hectic areas. In combat, well, it's not usually affected because, of course, you're usually only fighting an enemy or two at the time. Again, this is really early gameplay here, but this is just small examples I wanted to show you guys. So, of course, like I said, I pulled both footages from the Steam Deck and the Xbox One X. Of course, they have internal ways of recording their own footage, though with the Xbox One X, the game recording is actually a lot better because it's a GPU recorder, so it's recording straight up what the console is seeing rather than the screen, if that makes sense to you guys. And the reason I mention that is because of the fact that I have had multiple issues with the Steam Deck where I try to record footage for a game or when I'm playing something to get shorts and clips from, and it just freeze frames. I go to the media tab, I go look at my footage, and after like 5 seconds of playing, it just gets stuck on a frame. The audio will continue, but something along the lines happens where the Steam Deck stops recording and then those clips are completely useless. The Xbox One X does not have that issue. Alongside that as well, the Steam Deck, if you want to port that over to your phone, for example, that's the way I do it, it's the simplest way, you have to do it in 1 minute clips. You cannot do anything past 60 seconds and instantly send it to my phone, so long as, of course, my phone can store it. So it makes processing footage a lot easier because doing the Steam Deck way, instead of just sending it to my phone, I have to hook it up to a PC, export through there, and then again, I still have to get it off of there, however I might do it. So it makes things more annoying. The other major factor here, regardless of what you guys may think of how the games look and play, also on the Xbox button, if you press and hold it, you can just swap between different apps and all that. You can have anything open as you want, X to close things. It's really simple stuff, right? Here's the biggest thing. So for those of you who know, on the Steam Deck, you have the All Games tab, your install, blah, 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 right? On here, it would normally be the setting where it would say games great on deck, which basically means they're Steam Deck verified. It will only show you games that are Steam Deck verified on this tab, right? Here it says Xbox controller instead. So here's the thing. This is still recognized as a PC, right? But of course, games are still built around an Xbox controller. The good and bad of the Xbox Rog Ally X. If I want to play a game like Inscription, for example, right, you're going to be using the trackpads in order to use that as a mouse. The Xbox Rog Ally X, if you try to play games that require a mouse of any format, it just will straight up not register. So, for example, if I go to 112 operator, right, you use a mouse to send people out to where they need to be, yada, 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 because you're a dispatch operator, right? This will just simply not register things. Unless games had the option to put into gamepad mode, you cannot play certain games because if it is a keyboard and mouse game, as the icon will show right there, it just simply won't register unless the game allows you to change your method of play. If you can play it, it'll show an Xbox controller. So that is an issue that this. But of course, this being a Windows-based device, it no longer has the limitations and issues that Linux does. So one of the games I just recently reviewed, and highly recommend you go watch it, is Mafia 3 Definitive Edition. I could not play that on the Steam Deck whatsoever because it is outright broken. From what I understand, the game just does not work due to a Linux-based issue specifically, but I was able to play it solely on the Xbox Rog Ally X, and I got through the entire game. It was buggy and stuttering, blah, 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 but that was a Mafia issue, not an Xbox Rog Ally X issue. And again, just the additive benefit of being able to play games at higher frames, at higher settings, of course, with more stability is a massive plus. I have completely stopped playing any form of multiplayer games on the Steam Deck, as not only did they run poor, but they've also just have never had consistency. And when trying to capture footage for them, like I want to say record a footage for a short of Chivalry 2 or Marvel Rivals or really anything else that is like a high powered, the Steam Deck just has an issue with recording that footage. It'll either just get stuck in freeze frame so the footage becomes unusable, or it'll negatively affect the frame rate. So not only does it open up my library to games that I could not play previously, but it also just allows me to play them at higher frame rates, at better stability, higher graphic settings if I want to. And again, of course, with that being added, I can also just record games easier through this. Now, of course, a lot of you may be saying, okay, that's great and all that, but the Steam Deck entry point is like $350. Well, yeah, sure, if you go get a refurbished one off of eBay nowadays, as the Steam store doesn't even sell the older models anymore. I used to have the LCD 64 gigabyte model. You can't get that from Steam anymore, right? They've been discontinued. They stopped making them, yada, yada, yada. Cool, whatever, right? $1,000 is still a lot of money for this thing, though. The best way I can compare it is a Steam Deck is a PS4. This is a baseline PS5, and it can be so much better in regards to performance. Again, from the Steam Deck, it doesn't matter what game I'm playing. Dying Light 2 is a prime example of that. It is verified on Steam Deck, but if I am not playing with lossless scaling on the Steam Deck, I'm hitting like sub 30 frames most of the time, right? If I do the lossless scaling, I'll hit 40, which is great. If I play it on the Xbox One Ally X on silent mode, which again, Steam Deck power, I will hit 40 automatically. And then of course I can go to performance mode and get to 60 easily, and I can pump up the graphics even higher. There's so many issues that just get outright fixed by playing on this thing. $1,000 is a lot, right? There's just no way around that. The white model of the Xbox Rog Ally, which I personally find to be dumb, which is about $600, $700 depending on what time you look. It's basically just a bump above Steam Deck. I don't see any reason why you would buy that one. I think it's actually counterproductive at that point. I would just say get an OLED Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is not going to go anywhere. There's just no way around that. It's going to be the crown jewel of handheld PC gaming anytime soon. Not only because Steam goes out of its way to optimize everything for it, because not only does it make the products, of course, but it's pushing it. But alongside that, it's the fact that Proton, with Proton, right, and the fact that whether it's indie developers, which is always going to be the main thing, right, or AAA games, they know there's a platform there. There's over 3 million Steam Deck users. So that's not going to go anywhere soon. But as time goes on, and we've already seen it happen in the last year or two, there are certain games like Dune the Dark Ages, Last of Us Remastered, again, Marvel Rivals, games like that that, like, yes, they're playable. Yes, you can get them to work. But there's other games like Spider-Man 2 that constantly come out and they just don't look good. Again, Dune the Dark Ages took its time to get playable. There's so many games out there that come out, and if they're not outright broken, take the Avatar game for example. You cannot play most. There's a number of multiplayer games you can't play on the Steam Deck, like such as PUBG or Rainbow Six Siege, because of Linux-based stuff. So the anti-cheat does not work. There's so many games on there that just don't work outright for one reason or another. The Xbox One X fixes that, and of course, the main thing that the main selling point is not only do I have all these other installers here, which on the Steam Deck, yes, you can do through the Heroic launcher, but it's never great. There's never been a time, and I don't think there will be a time where you can have other installers and it just runs perfectly smooth as if it does with Proton or SteamOS. It's just not going to happen on the Steam Deck. It's not built for that. But here, I don't have that issue. I can just swap over to different launchers at any time, and it's no issue. Like, this thing is built around that concept of, do you want to go to this thing? Cool, let's go do that. Blah blah blah. Like, there's no issue with it, and I can just swap between them back and forth without a problem. The only thing I will say though, the Steam Deck does have for sure over this is that if I want to go to desktop mode on the Steam Deck, you just power it and switch it over to that. If I go to this, then I have to basically restart the device to go back into gaming mode, which is really stupid. But again, there's so many benefits to this thing that solve so many issues that I have with the Steam Deck that I wouldn't have to do either. I do miss the trackpads, and again, that does remove some functionality from it, but most of the games that I'm playing just don't have it anyway, so it really doesn't get in the way that much at all. And then, of course, we have the fact that we simply just have access to the Xbox library as well. So many things are on PC nowadays, and there's so many games that are being ported over from PlayStation, Xbox, or wherever the case may be. But having the Xbox storefront for games that are just simply never on PC is great. But there's a caveat. So take it with Game Pass, for example. I have 3 months of Game Pass after buying this thing for free. You get the Xbox PC Game Pass, which is really, really stupid. This is an Xbox, right? That's how they over advertise these things. But I'm only locked into the PC version. Why do I have that? Is this not an Xbox? Like, I don't even understand why there's a PC quote unquote Xbox Game Pass anyways. Why is that limited in any capacity? I understand PC games are running on consoles. That's cool. But this is more of a console than it is a PC, if anything, if we're being honest. So, or on the other end, something really stupid is I own College Football 25. I have to own Game Pass just so I can cloud stream it. And while the cloud streaming is good, like, it works perfectly fine, outside of some stuttering and some lag on occasion, why? I even contacted Xbox support asking about them, and I was like, hey, I own this game. Why can't I just play it outright? It's not a PC game. So Xbox is lying outright saying that everything is an Xbox if I can't even play my quote unquote Xbox games on the PC because simply it's not a PC game. I still can't get NHL. I still can't get MLB The Show. There's a number of games that are on the Xbox store normally that I can't get because it's not a PC game. So while I do have the Xbox library here for the most part, it still has to come with an asterisk because of the fact that if it doesn't run on PC or they don't put it on PC, then you don't get to play it. Alongside that, if let's say you want to go play a game, right? When you go to the Xbox store, their equivalent of the Steam Deck verified badge is slightly different now, where you have to look for very two specific things. You have to look for the Xbox Play Anywhere button, which means you can play anywhere. Cool. You don't have to cloud stream it. You can just buy it, install it, and play it there. Because if it doesn't have that, or if it doesn't have mostly compatible or some sort of format of compatible with handheld, you can't play it outright. The thing might even let you buy it, but you still can't play it if it decides that we haven't gone around to verifying that this can work on the Xbox Rog Ally X. And I think they took their sweet ass time doing it because there's a lot of games that still don't have it. I couldn't play UFC 5, for example, because it told me I was not held compatible, even though it's a freaking that series started off on console, so I don't even understand how that works. But I'm ranting on a little. So in the end, where do I land with this? First things first, of course, again, ergonomic feel I think is perfectly fine. I don't think there's much of a difference in either one. It's just going to come down to personal preference, but I don't really know why you'd be swayed one way or the other. Unless you're just really big fan of having the grips of a controller, I don't think it really matters. Performance-wise, this thing is going to win every single time. There are certain games that don't need the extra boost, of course, or again, with the Steam Deck verified badge and yada yada yada, indie games and so on, you don't need the extra boost. But other games, especially multiplayer games, this is going to fix a lot of the issues that a user may have on Steam Deck. There's a lot of games out there that people want to play that simply either are struggle to play on Steam Deck or just frankly can't be played at all. And I don't think that's the Steam Deck's fault. When this thing came out, it was already a generation behind. This thing came out in 2022. The Xbox Series X and PS5 had already come out in 2020. This thing was playing behind from the get-go. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And because not only have we seen the developers have taken hold and said, okay, this is something that we can really hone in on. People like this thing. People want to get into PC gaming, such as myself. This was my introduction to PC gaming. But it doesn't change the fact that it's starting to show its age. If you ask me on a personal level, should I spend $1,000 instead of $500, for example, on the OLED or just a higher gigabyte model of the Steam Deck? If you have $1,000 to spend, go for it. I 100% say go for it. I got lucky. My girlfriend got me this for Christmas. So had it not been for that, I could not have gotten this for myself. Unfortunately, there's just no way around it. But again, when it comes to not only making videos for you guys, being able to capture footage, having a more expansive library, opening up my own personal Steam library, getting away from Linux-based issues or just Steam Deck compatibility stuff, or again just its own performance issues. This thing is beating it out of the water. There's no way around it. And when it comes to modern gaming, whether on PC or anything else, if you're the kind of person who wants to play the newest games, you want to have access to the Xbox library, which again is its own whole catalog, right? I understand there's a lot of games that are on PC now that are on the Xbox, right? They're pushing their games over. The additive Game Pass is great if that's something that you're into, that you want to subscribe to, but simply just having that extra thing, the extra library itself, is a major plus. Having the ability to boost up your performance at any single time, to make any game that would run on the Steam Deck maybe fine or manageable, whatever the case may be, to not being great, that boost from 30 to 60 is noticeable. Being able to play at higher resolutions, being able to play at ultra settings is great. I love that. Being able to recapture footage much easier, the color palette, and being able to change it to whatever the hell I want whenever I want, instead of just the brightness settings on the Steam Deck. It makes a massive difference. Also, the Wi-Fi chip is better. I can have download speeds twice as good. I like the feel of how this thing is. The battery life is improved in my opinion. The extra weight is not noticeable in any real regard. The speakers, I forgot about that. They're way louder. Like, this thing is beating the Steam Deck in every single regard, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the Steam Deck by any means. But if I had the choice between spending 500 something dollars and then going over the edge and spending 1,000, if I have the money to, why wouldn't I? Especially with the rising prices of RAM, GPU, and all these other things that I hear about. If you want to get into PC gaming and you still like your Xbox stuff, or you have an account already, you want to be able to play these things, and of course Xbox is going to raise the amount of games that are eligible to be played on this thing, if not add extra support, go for it. I don't know why. I don't know why you wouldn't. But again, I also say that with the pinch of salt, recognizing the fact that not everyone can afford $1,000 PC handheld. There's just no way around that. More and more PC handhelds are going to come out. The Steam has already outright said that they're not going to make a Steam Deck 2 unless they can make a 50% boost in power or otherwise, which, if we're being honest, that's just not going to happen anytime soon. The tech just isn't there. And even if they were to come out with the Steam Deck 2 tomorrow, we're looking at prices of the Steam machine where it looks like it's going to be upwards of $600, $800, and that's 6 times more powerful than a Steam Deck, according to them. The idea that a Steam Deck 2 would be any more affordable than an Xbox Rog Ally X right now just isn't the case. It's just not going to happen. The Steam Deck 2 is going to be like a Switch 2, but even more expensive, where yes, it'll be a better performance. Yes, it'll have better resolutions and yada, 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 but it's still going to have its limitation. It's still going to be behind. You're still going to be playing catch up. And while playing catch up is great, if you have something better already, why not go for it? But that's going to do it for today, guys. I hope I can inform you with anything. If you have any more questions or comments, please comment them down below. I will answer any questions that I can. I will do a 6 month review when it gets to 6 months. I'll keep you guys up to date with everything that's going on with the Xbox One X as I can. But again, with that all being said, guys, thank you for watching. I'm Hat Top Gaming. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you all later. Peace.